What's going on, MMA fans? I'm back to do a response video to Marshall's video on his top 5 most dominating MMA fighters in their prime. I'm going to go over my top 5. I'm also going to expand it a little bit, do a 6 through 10 to kind of make it a top 10, because I thought there were some guys that also need to be on this list. Everyone's going to have differing opinions on this. That's the beauty of the sport, it's the beauty of MMA. Everyone's entitled to their opinions and their views, like I always say. So let's get right down into this. At number 5, Takanori Gomi. Gomi was one of those guys in Pride that just was a terror in the lightweight division. You go back to Bushido 9, the destruction of Tatsuya Kawajiri. One of the fights that really cemented his place on the map, with him not already... let me rephrase that. That fight really cemented his place on the map, even though he already was on the map. And numerous other wins that he had over Ishida. He had the fights with Aurelio, Jens Pulver, Luis Azeredo, Hayato Maha Sakurai. I mean, the list goes on for Gomi, but I think he's still got some good years left in him. He's definitely still, I think, in his prime. I still think he deserves to be on this list. At number 4, I have Kid Yamamoto. Only one loss out of his 17 fights. Excuse me, one loss out of his 18 fights that he's fought. Fights over Ronnie Yaya, Genki Sudo, Cal Uno, Royler Gracie. He is a destructor. I mean, the guy is absolutely amazing. He's got some amazing hands. Really, really good ground game. He's one of those guys when you watch him, you just go, wow. He just put a beat down on somebody, and that's what he does. As Carsten says, he puts beat downs on people. And Kid deserves to be, I think, at number 4. At number 3, Anderson Silva. Silva's really come into his prime. It really started with that fight that kind of put him on this track to success that he's got right now at Cage Rage against Tony Fricklin. And then coming into his own, fighting Chris Leben, fighting Rich Franklin, fighting Travis Lutter, fighting Dan Henderson, Nate Marquardt. I mean, he really has shown why he is one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. And why, he's a very, very dominant fighter, and he's still really in his prime. At number 2, I have Wanderlei Silva. A lot of people still question whether Wanderlei is still in his prime. At the time, though, that he was in Pride fighting in the middleweight division, which is the equivalent of the UFC light heavyweight division, Wanderlei was just a terror. There was a reason that they called him the Axe Murderer. He absolutely just ran through guys. When you thought that you had him beat for a second, the guy would come back and just absolutely look amazing. And the second Rampage fight, Rampage was doing really, really good in that first round, and then all of a sudden Wanderlei came back and just started just giving Rampage 1-2 combos, vicious knees, and ended up getting one of the most vicious knockouts you'll ever see in MMA. But his wins, his wins over Rampage, his fight with Arona, Nakamura, Kazushi Sakuraba, Ikuhishu Minowa, Dan Henderson. Then you could even go back to, his recent fight with Keith Jardine. So, Wanderlei, I think, deserves to be on this list. He definitely was in his prime at that time. If he's still in his prime now, I think that's kind of up for debate. At number 1, I've got Fedor. Just recently beating Tim Sylvia. Going to be fighting Andrei Arlovsky. Hopefully, in the future, going to fight Josh Barnett. You saw him fight Big Nogueira, Big Nog. You saw him fight Crow Cop. You saw him fight Mark Hunt, Zuluzinho, Kevin Randleman, Mark Coleman, Fujita, Gary Goodridge, Heath Herring. The list goes on, but Fedor has really cemented his place as probably the best fighter in the world right now. If not one of the best, depending on how you look at it or your opinion is of him, and one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. So I have Fedor at 1. All right, gonna move from 10 to 6 now. At number 10, I have Jens Pulver. Jens, at the time of the UFC, he was the first ever lightweight champion. Jens definitely at that time was a scary, scary dude. A lot of people, said, "Man, this dude's the real deal." The one fight that he was kind of really, really, really close. It could have gone either way. A lot of people thought BJ Penn won, but of course the BJ Penn, Jens Pulver, their first fight. You had his vicious, vicious knockout of John Lewis. you had his fight with Cal Uno and his fight with Dennis Hallman. So I think Jens deserves to be, if not at the top 10, but maybe even top 20. I put him on here though because I thought that earlier in his career he definitely was in his prime. At number 9, Matt Hughes, one of the most dominant welterweights ever, one of the most dominant UFC welterweights as far as a champion is concerned ever. His fights with Trigg, his fights with Penn, his fights with GSP, Carlos Newton, Maha Sakurai, Joe Riggs. The list goes on for Matt Hughes. Very, very good wrestling, was a dominant fighter, had good submission skills. He comes in at 9. At number 8, the guy looking through the cage at the other end of the world over at Vanderlei Silva would be Chuck Liddell. Another great knockout artist, with the wins over Babalu, Couture, Ortiz, Vernon White, Alistair Overeem over in Pride, Belfort, Munson, Randleman, trying to think who else he fought. And also Murillo Bustamante is another one you could throw out there. But Chuck in the UFC was a terror. He went through a lot of guys. When Rampage came into the UFC, of course, that streak ended. At that time, though, before Rampage had come in, Chuck was in his prime. Now, it looks like he's kind of gone down the staircase, and either he's contemplating maybe fighting a couple more fights or maybe retiring. So we'll see how that ends up for him. But I think Chuck deserves to be at number 8. At number 7, I have Royce Gracie. Really, I know this one could be up for debate as well. A lot of people would say that was Royce dominant. A lot of times he was getting hurt or beat up, and then all of a sudden he would pull a submission. But in the earlier UFCs, Royce Gracie was the man. I mean, you saw him beat Ken Shamrock, you saw him beat Kimo, you saw him beat Dan Severn, Pat Smith, Sakuraba. I mean, well, of course he. Trying to remember, Sakuraba was over in Pride, and then he fought Sakuraba again. I think that one ended up being ruled a no contest because I think Gracie popped for steroids, if I remember right. But nonetheless, I think Royce deserves to be on this list. I think at that time, in the first UFCs, he was the man. He was winning left and right, and I think he deserves to be on this list. At number 6. This guy could be in the top 5, and he deserves to be on here. I really think so. I think he really deserves to be on here, rightly so, as Miguel Torres. Out of 35 fights, he's only lost once. He's the number 1 bantamweight in the world. His wins over Yoshihiro Maeda, Chase Beebe, Jeff Beddard. He definitely deserves to be on this list. So, those are my top 5 and my top 10. Leave me some comments, constructive, negative, positive. Let me know what you think. I know everyone's going to have different opinions on this, like I said, but nonetheless, hope you enjoyed this video. And on that note, you guys have a great day.